Now at this moment we're going to start adding some text to our index page. If you're following along with me, I've got the index page that we created in the previous videos, and I've double clicked its icon to open it right here. In the top left you'll notice it says index.html. Now I'm working with a split screen view, and in order to see our information a little bit better, I'm going to go to the top right hand corner of our windows here, and I will collapse my icons just to give me a little bit more space. I'm going to open this up a little bit by spreading it like this so you can see the design view on this side and the code view on this side. Now you'll notice in that code view I have a small, or rather a short doc type, indicating that this is a HTML5 element and HTML5 page. So we will be discussing a little bit more about working with the HTML5 structure a little later. At this moment though, we're just looking at the basic page and what we can do to format some of the information that we're trying to add. At the beginning though, I will draw your attention to the fact that we have a title here in the head section of our document, which says untitled document. Well, that's not really the best kind of title. It's not great for search engines, and it kind of looks like, the blemish on the forehead of your website. So there's nothing that makes you look more like a rookie than having a title that says untitled document. So we're going to change that, and I'm just going to say my first page. Okay. So now that we've got that done, you can see that whenever you make a change in the code view, the properties window also reflects that in order to see those changes, you should click refresh or press F5. So you can see that nothing's really changed just yet, but when we press refresh, you can see that the title is still here, but notice up here, another place where you could have changed the title would have been right up at the top here. So now that we've got that in place, let's move to this area, the design view, and we're going to add some very simple text. Now, I do want to show you one thing. When I click on the design view, you'll notice that my cursor on the left-hand side seems to appear right at the beginning of the body. So that means any of the content that appears in this white area on the design view is content that will be shown inside the body tags. All right, well, first of all, let's just write out some very simple text like hello world. All right, in the code view, you'll see that the word hello word is not formatted in any way. It's not a paragraph, it's not a headline, it's not anything, it's just basic text. And that is reflected in the design view as well. Well, what we can do in Dreamweaver, the beautiful part about working in Dreamweaver is that I can select the entire line, or you could triple click to select that entire line, and we could go down to our properties window. And since we're formatting HTML, you'll see here that it says formatted as none. But if we were to click on this, you'll notice that there is a short list of block level elements that we can choose from. So I could say make this a paragraph or heading 1, 2, 3 all the way to 6, or even pre-formatted text. So what does that mean? Well, if I were to choose paragraph, you will see that nothing really changes in this view here. However, in the code view, you'll notice that the text, which was not formatted in any way previously, now has an open and close paragraph. I'm going to put my cursor right in here, and I'm going to put the paragraph tags right next to each other. So I'll just press delete, and you can see that open paragraph, hello world, close paragraph is all on one line. I'm even going to press return and separate some of the paragraphs from those body tags that we were looking at just a second ago, just to make it easier to see. And remember, whatever you do in the code view is not necessarily going to be reflected here, because just adding spaces in the code view here doesn't add any extra spaces before or after hello world in the design view. So that's really a very great way of working. And let me just show you that another block level element we can choose from is a headline. Now you might be wondering, what exactly is a block level element? Well, you should be coming to this course with a good understanding of basic HTML structure. And there are many videos available on the Killer Sites website that will train you in basic HTML and basic CSS. And as I've mentioned in Chapter 1, when we introduce this video, that's a really good place to start. However, if you're jumping into things a little ahead of schedule, I'll just make mention that when you're working with basic HTML tags, certain tags are known as block level tags or inline tags. Now the difference between the two, a block level element can be considered any one of these among others. There are many others, but paragraphs and headlines are very, very common block level elements. They take up the entire space that's available to them, including everything else that's here. So if I wanted to, for example, have a H1 or another headline right next to this one, I wouldn't be able to do that unless I messed around a little bit with some CSS, simply because, notice, I'm going to copy this information, so I'll select it, and I can either right-click and copy it, or I can go to Edit and copy it. And you'll notice I'm on a Mac, so the shortcut is Command-C, but if you're on a PC, it's Control-C, and Paste, as you'll see here, it's grayed out, but Paste is Command-V or Control-V. So Command-C, I'll copy this, I'll put it right next to it, for example, and you'll see Hello World again. Notice in my code view, I've got two headlines right next to each other. But if we refresh this, you'll see that when you format this in HTML, because these are block level elements, what we see in the code view is not what we get in the design view, or rather in the browser itself. So these are block level elements. Block level elements always appear underneath each other. They always take up the entire line of space that's available to them, and they also have a certain amount of space in between the bottom and top of those elements, a certain amount of margin. So notice if I wanted to introduce something like a paragraph in here, it too is a block level element, and it would also appear underneath these elements. Now, if you want to talk about an inline element is basically elements that appear inside of other elements. So let me make this look in the code view pretty much what it looks like in the design view. So one on top of another. That's pretty much what we have here. And let me show you how you can easily introduce a paragraph inside of Dreamweaver. If you're in the code view, I mean, certainly I could come into the code view and just press return and start typing it out. And you may be familiar with HTML, you should be, and if you are, you'll notice that you could just come in here and start typing. Now look, when you start typing in the code view, wonderful things that happen is this little drop-down list appears that gives you all of the tags that you can work with inside of Dreamweaver. It's really awesome. So if I were to just come in here and say P for paragraph, and close that and say this is a paragraph. Now if I want to close this tag, I'll just start it out and then put a /, and as soon as you put a /, Dreamweaver is smart enough to know, oh, he's got an open paragraph here. This must mean that he's going to need a closing paragraph. So be careful. As soon as you write that /, it'll close that tag automatically for you. Now we have to refresh this in order to see it, and there you go. We've got two headlines and a paragraph directly underneath it. Paragraphs are block level, so even if I wrote it right next to it over here, it would still appear underneath. It takes up the entire area. Now here's an example of an inline element. If I wanted to, I could select, let's say, the word is, or maybe paragraph would be more specific. So let's say I wanted to italicize the word paragraph. So I could go to my properties window and I'll click the I, and now you'll see that the EM or emphasis tag has been introduced in between or before and after the word paragraph, emphasizing this word, making it look like it's italicized. That's fantastic. And you'll see that this is inline. It's inside of a block level element. So inline tags, especially things like images and bold and emphasis, for example, I could use both, right? I could say emphasize it with italics and make it bold as well. So the strong element has been introduced here as well. So not only is italic, it's bold. These are both examples of inline elements. So you can see that difference between an inline and a block level element just by working in this fashion right here. Now a word about your headlines. Headlines here, I've got two of them. We've got a H1 and we've got another H1, but I'll change that by selecting it, then going down to my properties window and saying, let's make this a H2. And you'll see that H2s are smaller than H1s, so they reduce in their size as you go higher up. So a H3 would be smaller, a H4 would be smaller, so on and so forth. And if I wanted to eliminate this headline, I would just have to select it, press delete. Now notice what's happening. This is a reason why I want you to be using the split screen view as you're formatting your text, because it seems like there's still some space here. And what's happened is the H4 that we just had there a second ago is actually still there, but there is a non-breaking space inside of the tags. It's sort of like a placeholder. Now, if you want to eliminate that completely, it's not just a matter of eliminating it here, because if I started writing something, you'd see that it would be formatted as a H4. And that's not what we want. So just merely deleting in your design view is often not enough. You have to go back one more step. So press delete again. And now you can see that I only have my H1 and my paragraph in the split screen view. All right, so that's a little bit about adding that information. One last thing is, let's go about grabbing some text from an external source and pasting it into our document. So I'm going to go to any browser. It doesn't really matter which one you want to be using. So I'm just going to open up Safari. And I'm going to ask you to navigate to, well, there's a couple places you can go for dummy text or space holder text. A very common one is lorem ipsum. If you just search in Google for lorem ipsum, it'll probably take you to lorem ipsum or lipsum.com, where you could generate some Latin text that we could paste in here. But there's another fun one that I've been using lately, which is kind of easy to work with, and it's called Filarati. Filarati is a very nice example of some HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript generated information. So I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller so you can see it. And as you can see here, you can grab text from different authors which are in the public domain, Herman Melville, Moby Dick, for example. And notice you can just run through this area here, and as you do, it'll generate a few different, in this case, paragraphs. You could generate H1 or list items or text as well, and basic text is not formatted. But I'm going to show you what we can do with the paragraphs. So if I were to, say, take 3 paragraphs of information, as it's instructing me, click on it to copy. Now it's copied. And then I will, well, you can close this, and I'll go back. Now, in my design view, let's take a look. If I want to introduce these 3 paragraphs after the other paragraph, I could come in here, press return. Now when you press return, notice there's nothing there yet, but what Dreamweaver is doing is it's creating an empty paragraph, open and close, with the non-breaking space inside of it, a container. It's just waiting for information. So let me show you what happens. If I remember our shortcuts from before, edit, paste is Command V on a Mac and Control V on a PC. So if I were to use that shortcut, Command V, you can see a couple of things have happened. Well, right now, if I paste it into my design view, it's including those paragraph tags that we wanted, but it's actually writing them out as a paragraph tag in my design view, and that's not at all what I wanted to see. So I'm going to undo that by pressing Command Z. Now we could get around that by just going into our code view and Command V, pasting it in here, and notice those paragraphs formatted the way we want them to look great, and they don't show up here the way I just mentioned. So it's probably best to paste directly into your code view, and then when you refresh, you'll notice that those P open and close paragraph tags are gone from here. So when we come back, I will talk to you a little bit about introducing elements like links into our pages and how we can get things a little bit better structured than they are at the moment.